a date which will live in infamy.
In 1941, Roosevelt proposed new programs to assist the Allies. He said, "We must be the great arsenal of democracy." So Congress passed the Lend-Lease Act, allowing the president to aid any nation he believed vital to U.S. defense. Under the Lend-Lease Act, the United States sent billions of dollars worth of aid in the form of weapons, tanks, airplanes, and food to Britain, the nationalists in China, and other allied countries. Tensions are rising between the United States and Japan. The United States was unhappy with Japan's invasion of Manchuria and China, while the Japanese government believed that the only way to solve its economic problems was to expand its territory and get more resources. In 1940, Japan signed the Tripartite Pact with Germany and Italy. It was now a former member of the Axis alliance fighting the European War. Japan and China were fully at war, and in 1937, Japan committed unspeakable atrocities in Nanking. It will become known as the Nanking Massacre. Pictures of the massacre were sent to the American press, and it swung Western opinion against the Japanese even further. Now the big question is, why did Japan attack the United States? Since other than being a financial backer, the US is not in World War II. Well, Japan has some big dreams to continue to expand their empire into Southeast Asia. Japan knows that the United States Navy is its biggest threat to their imperialistic ambitions. Come 1940, Japan moved into French Indochina. The U.S. stopped shipments of airplanes, machine tools, and aviation fuel to Japan and ordered for more military presence in the Philippines in the hopes of discouraging the Japanese from continuing their war in the Far East. The Japanese knew that if they continued their occupation into Southeast Asia and took over places like Singapore, that would lead to the U.S. potentially stepping in. So the Japanese felt that a preemptive strike against the Americans would be the best military strategy. They started planning an attack that would cripple the U.S. Navy and thereby taking out their biggest threat. This could also pressure America to dropping their economic sanctions on oil, and Japan really wanted oil. So the Japanese goal was to prevent the American Pacific Fleet from interfering with their campaign to take over Southeast Asia. Secondly, they hoped to buy time to increase their naval strength and strengthen their military position. And finally, the Japanese believed the attack would weaken morale in America to the extent the government would drop its demands and seek a peaceful compromise with Japan. Now, Pearl Harbor is a Hawaiian city where a huge U.S. Navy and Air Force base was located. Hawaii is located near the central of the Pacific Ocean, roughly 2,000 miles from the U.S. mainland and about 4,000 miles from Japan. Pearl Harbor was the base of most of the American Pacific Naval Fleet. So, the Japanese plan was to destroy this Pacific Fleet so they would be unchallenged in their war campaign in the Pacific. So on December 7th, after months of planning the practice, the Japanese launched their attack. Pearl Harbor was attacked by somewhere between 350 to 450 Japanese aircraft in 2 waves. The attack started at 8 a.m. Japanese planes filled the sky over Pearl Harbor. It was a Sunday morning and many sailors were spending their morning sleeping in. At 8:10, a bomb smashed through the deck of the battleship USS Arizona. The ship exploded and sank with more than 1,000 men trapped inside. Before World War II, it was common for brothers to serve on the same ship and in combat, but that day 23 sets of brothers died in the attack of the US Arizona. The effect on family members was so noticeable that the Army stopped placing brothers on the same ship. As American sailors were caught off guard, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor had failed to destroy the Pacific Fleet entirely. Most of the aircraft carriers were away from the base, and most of the shipyards and submarine docks were left intact. In all, the attack destroyed nearly 21 American ships and more than 300 airplanes. Over 2,000 soldiers, sailors, and civilians were killed, and about 1,000 people were wounded. If you visit Hawaii today, you will find the USS Arizona is still in the same place it was the day of the attack in 1941. The ship is still visible in the crystal clear waters of Hawaii. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt addressed the U.S. Congress on December 8th, the day after the attack.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications to the very life and safety of our nation.
Within an hour after the speech was finished, Congress declared war on Japan. Only one member of Congress voted against war, 388 to 1. That one was the first woman in Congress. 3 days later, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declared war against the United States, so Congress responded by declaring war on Germany and Italy. More than 2 years after the start of World War II, the United States had entered the conflict. The Japanese admiral, Isoroku Yamamoto, allegedly said, "I fear all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant," and filled it with terrible resolve. After the Pearl Harbor attack, the American people were united in their determination to go to war. The Japanese had wanted to goad the United States into an agreement to lift the economic sanctions against them. Instead, they had pushed the United States into World War II.